Hi, my name is Elizabeth. I'm a librarian with the Cosby Library and Community Commons. And in this video, I'll be showing you how to use the scratch board or scratch paper that was included in the Adult Craft to Go kit for September and October. And the purpose of this video is just to show you how to use the materials and then give you some inspiration for your own designs. So you can see here I have a completed bookmark. You should have a bookmark included in your kit. So this one has a doodle design on the entire surface of the bookmark. I'll be showing you some other ideas that you might want to use. This material is usually marketed as children's craft material, but I think it's really fun to use as an adult, especially for doodling projects, which you can see I've started a doodling project here. I'll try to show you a little bit how quote professional artists use scratch boards. I'm not very good at using scratch boards in this way, but I'll show you how you can experiment with that method if you want to try to make drawings with your scratch paper or your scratch board. This material is a lot more like paper than it is like board. Again, at the professional level, you'll find different tools. You'll find metal tools instead of wooden tools. You'll find that it is actually a board instead of a piece of paper. So there are a lot of differences between this casual crafting material and professional grade material. But if you find that this really speaks to you, you may want to go and give some of those professional tools a try. So let me begin by showing you a little bit of what I mean by doodling and why I think scratch paper or scratch boards are really great for doodling. So when we talk about doodling for adults, this is sort of like the next step for relaxation crafts for adults. You might remember that coloring books were really popular and still are really popular for some people. And now doodling has kind of caught on. So this is a completed doodle that I made within a circle. And so for each pie slice, I just began with a simple shape of some kind. So maybe a swirl, maybe a line, and then you gradually fill in those shapes with smaller and smaller details. And you're trying not to think too much about it as you go along. This is supposed to be giving your mind a chance to relax. You're using the Bob Ross theory of art, wherein you can have no mistakes, only happy accidents that turn into something beautiful later on. I can't tell you how many times I've started a pattern and thought, gosh, I really don't like the way this is turning out, but I'm going to keep going. And then in the end, I end up really liking it. Especially when you do these denser designs, really tiny mistakes don't really show. It just lends a beauty to the overall pattern. Here's another one where I added a little bit of color and I left a lot of negative space on this side. So you might want to leave some negative space as a contrast to some of the busier portions of your doodle. This one I just split into 4 quadrants. And this one was totally free form. I started here in the corner and just grew the design out. This is one of those designs that I thought I really didn't like. I really didn't like this heart at first. I thought, oh, that's just, that sticks out too much. But in the end, I really ended up liking it. And I think it provides a nice focal point for this side of the drawing. And then I sort of filled in with something bigger and less detailed on this side. So that's what I thought you might want to do with your scratch paper, your scratch board. So I'm going to show you how simple it is to use this material by continuing my doodling project here. So with this material, you'll want to use a wooden stylus. And if you actually look up wooden stylus on the internet or on Amazon, what you're going to come up with is a tool that's mostly used for children, and it has a really blunt point. And it doesn't really work well for this kind of detail work on scratch paper. So what you actually want to look for are skewers, which is what I included in your to-go kits. So if you run out, if the tip blunts to the point to where it's not really working for you anymore, just go out and get yourself a pack of skewers, and that should work just fine. You don't want it to be so super sharp that it's catching in the paper, but you do want it to be pretty sharp because that's how you're going to get a lot of these fine details. I'm going to zoom in here really quick. So you can see that I've used some hash marks to fill in some spaces, some really tiny lines that look like dots to fill in some areas. So you can get pretty detailed with this material. And I think the rainbow is a lot of fun. You can also get scratch paper that has just a white background, so that it's white and black, and that looks quite stunning as well. So if I'm going to continue in this quadrant, let's say, I might want to continue with a triangle shape, and all I have to do is just scratch very lightly to scratch off that black coating that's on this paper. You do need to be a little bit careful with this paper, not to let it abrade against other surfaces while you're storing it, because it can lose some of that black material, but it is fairly sturdy. You can scratch it with your fingernails, so be careful that you don't let your fingernails drag. So I'm going to continue creating sort of a scale or a mountain pattern. And to get rid of the little flecks, you can either just gently use your finger. You might have maybe a soft paintbrush around. You might have an old makeup brush that is clean but still nice and soft. You don't want to use a paintbrush that's too stiff, because again, you can damage this black coating. So let's see, I'm going to I'm going to stick with these triangles for right now, I think, and I'm just going to fill in these triangles. So I'm going to fill in with another diamond pattern inside. And again, while you're doing this, you don't want to overthink it. You don't want to think too hard. Pay attention to taking nice deep breaths. This is supposed to be a relaxing activity. You're not trying to create anything representational. You're just trying to go with the flow. I like to use a lot of doubled lines. Make sure also, the other reason why this is a great relaxation activity is because you don't want to push too hard with your stylus. You want to push just hard enough to get that black coating to scrape off. So don't press down, don't grind down really hard. You know, this is supposed to be stress relieving, so you're going to let go of all your stress. Just lightly scratch at the surface to create your designs. I'm going to continue with this diamond theme. I also kind of like the feel of the stylus scratching against the board. That might just be me personally, but I think you'll find a lot to really enjoy about this activity. It's a little hard to do it from a standing position, so I do recommend that you sit. And then again, I can continue. I'm going to fill in with lines here. And you can see how that pattern builds. And you might want to alternate between a busier pattern and a pattern with more negative space. So I purposefully left this one with a little bit more negative space so that, you know, you could visually rest your eyes there. I might do the same with some other sections. Maybe this section over here I might leave with more blank space and try to fill in a little bit more detail here. So lots of different directions you can go with this. I will finish this piece and I will come back later and show it to you later. Let me move on to the bookmark and give you some ideas there. So with the bookmark, there were 3 different shapes, so your bookmark might not look exactly like this one. You can see here's one that I've completed. Now if you do actually want to use this as a bookmark, you might want to spray it when you're done with some sort of acrylic sealant so that it doesn't come off on your book, because this black coating does have a chance of coming off and marking your book. And you can of course attach a ribbon or some sort of string here. I did include a small piece of ribbon in your kit. But if you don't want to make a really detailed drawing like this, of course you can make something much simpler. So let's say, and you will have to clean the tip every once in a while, by the way, so just pull with your fingers and clean that tip off. So let's say that I want to fill in with some nice large swirls. Maybe I'm going to do a floral pattern. Let me fill in one more down here. So I can continue all the way up. And if I don't want to be exactly regular with it, I can change up my pattern a little bit. And then from here, I can just decide how filled in do I want this. Let me zoom in here. Maybe you can see a little bit better. So how full do I want this pattern to be? How much negative space do I want? Do I want just a little bit? Do I want a lot? I can just keep on going until it feels right. So you can always come back. Again, trying not to overthink it. We're just letting our mind wander. Whatever we do, it will look good. If we make a mark that we don't like, we just fill in around it with other designs and other patterns until it does look good. Again, with this one, which I'm actually really pleased with now, there were elements of this that I didn't really like until I got more detail in around it, and just made an overall pattern that was pleasing to the eye. So when you look at a pattern like this, you're usually not looking at each individual tiny little detail. It's the whole that matters. So the whole is what we're going to be worrying about, and not each individual stroke. So maybe now it's time to start adding in some floral details. Small dots are a little bit hard to make, but I think you'll figure out after a while how it works best for you to make some of these smaller details. And again, I'm not being overly concerned. That one doesn't exactly match that one. Just trying to go with the flow. Letting my eye lead me to a spot that seems right. And if I wanted to add in some other details, maybe I'll double up some of these lines. And you can turn your work while you're working. I was trying to keep it straight for the camera, but of course you're welcome to turn your work. A lot of people turn their work constantly, working from different directions. And maybe along these lines, I'll put in some larger dots. So there, that's a great start. Some of you may like it just like that, just right there. I'm going to continue to fill in some more patterns probably. So again, I'll show you my finished design once I come back. Let me back out again, and I'm going to show you a little bit of how you might use this material to make a more realistic drawing. And again, I'm not very good at this. This is not what I use this material for, but just to let you know that this is a possibility. So some people use this paper like it's engraving material, basically. So if you know anything about engraving and how that works, when you make a plate for engraving, you're carving away at the parts that will turn out light, and then you're leaving the parts that are dark. And so basically it's like opposite. So if I were to fill in this circle and try to make it look like it has shadow on it, if I make hash marks on this side, I'm basically saying that the light is coming from this side. So you can see that the lighter I make it, and I can actually scratch away, you know, all of the black on this side. It starts to look like I have a lighting source coming from this direction, okay? Whereas if I concentrate my strokes on this side of the ball, and again, where my light is shining brightest, I'm going to scratch away more of that dark material. Now I have a light source shining on this part of the ball. So can you see how that sort of changes? If you're really interested in mastering this form of art with this material, I would suggest that you use the 2 pieces that I gave you as practice pieces, and then buy yourself another pack of this paper. It's really cheap. This paper that's advertised as being used for kids crafts. Again, I don't think it's necessarily a kid craft material, but it is really cheap. You don't need to spend a lot of money for this kind of practice material, maybe, and maybe you will someday advance to that really high level of artistry with this material where you're making very realistic pictures. A lot of people like to draw animals with this material because the fur does really nicely with this kind of tool, or even birds. I'm going to show you a little bit. Again, watch where you're putting your shading, because I can make a flower where the petals seem dark in the center and light in the edges. Or I can make a flower where the light is coming from the center and the edges are darker. With my vase, you know, I'll have to choose where is my light source coming from. I can sort of create a little bit of a shape with the direction of my lines. So there I've created a suggestion of this part bowing outwards. So give it a try. If this appeals to you, give it a try. Don't use your paper for doodling, use it for this, and that will be just as valid. So I'm going to finish up some of these pieces, and I will come back and show you my results. All right, let's see what we ended up with. So I did work a little bit more on this project. Again, this is not really what I used this paper for, but it turned out kind of interesting. I did manage to get some shape defined on the vase down here. I do think it's interesting how different the 2 flowers look, starting from the center versus starting from the edge. I do think starting from the outer edge makes a better looking flower, at least with my abilities. So that turned out sort of interesting. I have my 2 bookmarks. So that was the original bookmark. Here's my new one. A little hard to see with the light, but I liked how this one turned out. Again, it's no regular pattern, just shapes here and there. I added in some waves, some water droplets, so all kind of organic shapes. I tend to really lean towards the more organic shapes instead of the more geometric shapes. This is one of the interesting things about this technique is you really learn what sort of shapes you gravitate towards. Some people are very geometric in their designs. Some people do the very detailed mandala kind of designs. And I tend to lean towards more organic shapes. And then finally, here is this piece. You can see I filled in the rest of this space. I'll continue filling in just as I have spare time. I'm taking a break from my work. I might start to fill in a shape. You can fill in a shape partially and then come back to it later. So this isn't something that has to be done all at once. This is something you could work on all week, just a few minutes after work, while you're watching TV, listening to the radio a little bit, just sitting in silence as sort of a almost a meditation or a mindfulness activity. A lot of people use this for mindfulness activities, so trying to clear your mind of any future worries, past concerns, just trying to focus in the moment on what kind of shapes are coming to your mind and how you are inspired to fill in the paper, the space on your paper. If you want to doodle along with me, I'll give you one last opportunity here. I will start from a completely blank slate. I do want to mention that you can use a pencil to lightly draw a design on here, but this is supposed to be about just letting the inspiration come to you, letting it flow. The camera is going to have a little bit of trouble focusing on this black surface, by the way, so I'm sorry about that. Once my hands get in there, it should have a little bit of an easier time. So let's start doodling. As you saw from my examples, you can start with a basic shape like a circle or maybe many interlocking circles I've seen. That's a very pretty design. You can use a ruler to draw lines, to make irregular, almost triangular shapes like what I had on my other example. I'm just going to start with a wave. And I'm not trying to make it regular. I'm not trying to make it any particular shape. And now I'm going to build upon this wave. Again, cleaning the tip of my tool. So I'm going to build upon this wave. Again, I like to use sort of organic shapes. A lot of times I'll end up sort of making up stories about my doodles, believe it or not, because they kind of remind me of, you know, folk art of some kind. So a lot of times, you know, I'll be like, oh, this is the ocean, or this is a volcano. This is a tree growing up out of cracked soil. So little stories like that, nothing very detailed. You know, so maybe these are the ocean waves. It almost looks a little bit insect-like, which again is fine with me. So if I wanted, I can come back in and fill in these shapes. Maybe I want to fill in every shape. Maybe I want to fill in every other shape. With this kind of material, I like to use thin lines. And again, I'm trying just to be very light. Just barely scratching off that black surface. If I'm just doing every other one, and I decide later I want to do every one, of course I can come back and change that. And if I make a mistake and I accidentally fill in 2 in a row, well, then fate has made a decision for me. I'm going to fill in every one maybe, or maybe I'm going to fill in 2, skip 1, fill in 2, skip 1. No mistakes, right? Only happy accidents. All right, I'm really liking how this is turning out so far. So I can continue from here connecting designs, or I could make some disconnected designs with some negative space in between. So I think I'm going to make some disconnected designs. I'm going to come in here. I'm just going to start with some curves, and I'm going to see where that takes me. And what would I like to do up at the top? So I can actually, from here, I could start coming in from the corners if I want. I could change directions. A lot of people will just keep building and building and building off their designs. I tend to skip around a lot. Again, maybe that's just part of the way that my brain works. You might find that your concentration, your workflow works differently. I think I'm just going to repeat this pattern. I love ruffles. Love these little scallop patterns. I won't take you through covering up this whole paper. I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of my thought process, such as it is. Again, I'm not really totally thinking through everything that I do. Just kind of going with the flow and seeing what comes to mind, and then going with it. And if I get the impulse to kind of be like, oh no, I don't like that, and I want to go back and fix it, I stop that impulse, I resist that impulse. I just work with what has ended up on the paper, which is, again, why this is a really good medium to do this in, because you can't go back and erase mistakes. You just have to live with them and work with them. And I think that 95% of the time, you will go back after you're done, if you persist and you keep working on it, and you'll look back and you'll say, you know, I really like this, actually. That wasn't a mistake at all. Because you weren't really going for anything to begin with, right? Just letting it happen. This is looking almost sort of Dr. Seuss-like a little bit. And then from here, I think I'm feeling some circles. Maybe let those circles continue all the way across. Maybe these are bubbles in my ocean, right? Here I am making up that story again. Or maybe they're even, what, maybe they're jellyfish. Again, I'm not really trying to be representational, but I do find that my designs often remind me of something. And so sometimes I will just go with that. Sometimes I'll decide later that, well, that part really did remind me of jellyfish or flowers or a tree, but then I change tactics later on. I'm just kind of going to keep working on this side. I will go all the way across eventually, but in the interest of time, I'm going to just keep working on this side. What do I want to do within the circles? Again, trying not to overthink it. Again, small dots are kind of hard to make, and my my skewer is sort of losing its point, so at this stage I probably would go ahead and switch to a new tool, but I will keep on going with this one just in the interest of continuing our video. Another shape I really like is teardrop shapes because they fill in nicely gaps that I tend to end up with because a lot of my shapes are more rounded shapes. I also like leaf shapes for the same reason. So this is turning out to be a really interesting design, almost kind of alien looking, but that's fine. I'll see what it ends up looking like when I'm totally finished with it. But I hope this gives you an idea of what I mean by doodling. And it's, again, a really nice meditative sort of mindfulness activity. You can use it to sharpen your dexterity, learn to have greater control, which can help you, with your penmanship and with your other drawing. So think of it kind of as a warm-up activity if you are an artist, or as a relaxation activity if you aren't. You can do this with any kind of skill level. All you need to be able to do is hold this stylus and make some sort of mark. I hope you've been inspired, and I'll see you in the next video.